now.
All right, thank you, Andrew. So I am, again, during our 7th Indigenous Global Unity Summit. I am Lloyd Helferty, the Chief Ecosystem Director, Program Development Director, and Sustainable Society Consultant for Energyme University. Also the co-founder and administrator of the We Energyme Global Cooperation Turtle Island International Civil Society Organization that's seeking to undertake life value peace education in the context of life learning gardens. I did already enter it into the chat, some of the links to my profile, but I believe I probably did not put in the link for the We Energyme Global Cooperation Turtle Island International Civil Society Organization. So that is this Facebook group here. So as I am also a Goodwill Ambassador for the 5 Points Youth Foundation in Los Angeles with a portfolio that covers Canada, where I live, La Francophonie, the Commonwealth of Nations, and Turtle Island communities as this member of the International Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors and Activists, seeking to empower our communities to engage with royal, Indigenous, and tribal leadership, as well as interfaith business and neighborhood collaboratives to leave no one behind. So I am also a member of the Global Unity Business Group, which actually came together as a coalition of small businesses recently. The Global Unity Business Group is what we call a humanitarian enterprise and a global sustainable and regenerative development corporation. So we support and promote the local delivery of open source, regenerative, climate smart infrastructure set up as life learning gardens. So we're essentially managing a global Unity network of what we call UnityNet, local community engagement teams, as well as local business development networks in each country and each community who are supporting the work in turn in partnership with the Unity programs. So we have a number of events, projects, and campaigns that we're developing that will be delivered through this Unity network and the Unity network organizations that have been established around the world that deliver various projects, campaigns, events, such as the Tree of Peace and Reconciliation tree planting ceremonies, the Sunlight Spectacle virtual edutainment shows, the coordinated international bubble fun festivals. And so we're also supporting a global women's development network, in addition to supporting and promoting of course, the local delivery of this open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure, not just in the classrooms, but in all communities set up by the humanitarian entrepreneurs, what we call the feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs. So we start with setting up as life learning gardens, really designed for the delivery of hands-on practical learning programs, supporting all manner of life value peace education. So these gardens set up as CSV gardens, Victory Forests, Climate Smart Kitchens, Wheel of Life Farm Schools, and Spark Learning Centers, so what we call Climate Smart Education and Training Centers. So the projects that we do include these sacred site and watershed mapping projects, something called the Collaborative Tree Planting Initiative for twinning communities. We actually try to go beyond just twinning communities. We go towards thrinning and quadrinning and quintinning these communities to bring them together under partnerships as per SDG 17. So we're also developing a system of, or would like to develop a system of payments for ecosystem services using digital tokens of exchange for certified climate smart products that help to permanently sequester carbon, which is a way of reversing climate change drawdown concept, and that are made by these humanitarian entrepreneurs and organizations in each of their local communities, who are essentially helping to implement local solutions for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. So one of our other key campaigns, or a couple of other key campaigns are called Dream Boards in every community, to establish local community dream boards where we help to mobilize the youth to help them turn their dreams into reality. First, visualize a better world for themselves, and then display that for other community members. And then it's something called the Tea Diplomacy Initiative, which we're just at the beginning stages of working on that program. So, but the focus really for us is the humanitarian entrepreneurship learning programs. So supporting the delivery of those programs. So we're very much focused on engaging youth and educators and decision makers in these learning programs and community engagement processes, with this strong emphasis, of course, on women and girls, or feminists actually, as leaders in their communities. So including the men as well, in their own homes and their own families. So the goal is really to establish basically a new 21st century economy of compassion and cooperation, and the recognition essentially of life value as being fundamentally more important than money value. And where money is this construct created by humans that helps us to make decisions about the most economic path to achieving certain outcomes. But the outcomes, the goals, are what we're trying to achieve. So we look at these sustainable development goals today, we say, what do we want to achieve individually and collectively for ourselves as human beings? Where the money now can be used, hopefully, and leveraged to allow us to decide what is the most economic pathway to achieving those goals. So the Global Unity Network is what we're creating and establishing really right now to deliver this education, this training, and this awareness raising in cooperation with the Global Unity Business Group, which is setting this up. So we're networked through this International Unity Gardens Network, and a Unity Learning Network of educators who understand the value of delivering programs of life value peace education in our community. So this is the important meetings, these weekly meetings, these events, to outline our vision for the future for the Global Unity Business Group and for the network, to get some feedback from everyone about the various services that the business group might be offering to all of our stakeholders in the Global Unity Network. So our proposal has been to create this learning partnership for Global Unity. We may come up with a different name, more than likely, as a project of the Global Unity Business Group. But for this to be a multi-country project for connecting learning institutions, starting with universities and colleges, ensuring that students especially, as well as educators, are fully engaged and participating in the network and achieving the goals that we want to achieve. So we're trying to get at least one learning institution in each country of the world to be participating and coordinating other local, regional, and national learning institutions across each country that we're working with as we organize toward what we call a Climate Smart Global Youth Forum Week for later this year. That we're planning for October. This year will be the first. It's probably going to be smaller, but we are already in conversations with people in for instance, Uganda, and other people around the world that are affiliated with learning institutions. So as we move forward, I'm hoping that this conversation will blossom, it will come forth, and we will begin to create this worldwide education and training initiative in humanitarian entrepreneurship through collaboration between so many stakeholders that we have identified as key in each community. So this is what we call the heptamatrix partnership in each community that can be created. So our process of doing that is being formalized. So right now, it looks like our speaker is not yet on the line, but I would like to say that we are also promoting, first and foremost at this juncture, sustainable development and a process of localization of the SDGs by supporting our feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs and developing entrepreneurship programs, as well as pathways to regenerative development for local communities around the world. But we're actually starting here in Canada because this is where our core team is. So the idea is to start to build a membership and member countries to also join the network so we can share, so we can collaborate. So I, as the Goodwill Ambassador for the Commonwealth of Nations, which is 54 countries around the world, but also starting here in Canada, which is a Commonwealth of Nations, of course, as well. We're trying to as well engage with members of the Francophonie, 88 member jurisdictions, as well as what we would like to create is the United Communities of Turtle Island. So that is something else that we're working on, especially as we have these summit events. But in particular, as we engage with these communities, we're really looking to support the marginalized people and communities in these in the least developed countries first, and the communities that have historically been left behind, with the intention really being that we're trying to leave no one behind. So this concept of LNOB, which is sort of fundamental to the delivery of the Sustainable Development Goals, and especially at this time where we can use these digital tools as the entire world enters and proceeds to implement these various climate smart solutions within especially the context of the fourth industrial revolution, which is ongoing now. So again, I did put some links in, but for those who may not have heard of the fourth industrial revolution, really that's the ongoing automation of traditional manufacturing and industrial practices using smart technologies. So machine to machine communication, the Internet of Things, increased automation, improved communication, like what we're using today, Zoom, but also even self-monitoring. So these smart systems. So we're creating smart machines. And so this really is what Klaus Schwab called Industry 4.0, this revolution that's happening right now, that we're experiencing every day, that he even described it as saying its magnitude is yet unknown. So we're at this point in the fourth industrial revolution where I think we can start to leverage these tools and begin to, as we see artificial intelligence, as we see autonomous cars, many of the traditional jobs of the past will really simply be gone in a few years, in a few decades at the most. But we'll still need to produce things like food for ourselves. We'll always need to eat. Always the fundamentals of life will be here. So,
well, Lloyd, thank you so much. Go on. Just to let you know that Dr. Amadou is now with us and has raised his hand.
Okay,
but
yes.
Before we introduce him, perhaps we'll do a station identification. This is Andrew Williams Jr. I'm very pleased to share my screen now just to introduce our sponsors. If I can get this right, let's see here. Yeah, I'm sharing my screen now. This is today's activities. This is the Global Unity Network, and we're pleased to host this event for the Unity Learning Network and the Unity Gardens Network and Global Unity Indigenous Group. At the bottom, you'll see from the left our sponsors, beginning with the Universal Citizens Media Network. That's kind of like a eye there, and they've agreed to rebroadcast our content. Next to that is TRN.TV. Both of these are related organizations, and our intent is to empower people around the world to become producers and not just consumers of their content. Next, you'll have Agri4 Development. That's by Foley Chi. She's one of our stakeholders. Then 5 Points Youth Foundation, which is, as Lloyd said, based here in the United States. Physically, we're on the land of the Tongva people. And so from an indigenous standpoint, we are, in fact, Los Angeles has the largest group of indigenous people from anywhere in the United States. So the AHIABGA, AHIABGA, is an acronym for the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors, Advocates, and Activists. This was a project launched by 5 Points Youth Foundation on the International Day of Peace in 2019 as we transition to this decade of action on the Sustainable Development Goals. And finally, to the right, you'll see the Ed Fu Foundation. They've partnered with us because their focus is not just on Indigenous issues for women and girls, but for all of us around the world. So with that, Lloyd, I'll stop sharing my screen and perhaps we could introduce our guests. Stephanie, you're next up. So if you'd be so kind, Stephanie, to introduce yourself, and then we'll move forward and end with Dr. Mamadou, who will begin this presentation. Thank you so much. Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you so much, everybody. Everybody, good to see you and happy to be a part of this always. I'm Stephanie Schuler. I'm in Toronto, Canada. I'm a mother of 3 young adults, the youngest just graduating high school. And I am a social entrepreneur. And as such, I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of Toronto, OISE, the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. I'm in my final year. And I am also a learning and community design consultant. And I am founder and a director of Maui Aloha Project, a conscious eco-village initiative in Maui, Hawaii, and also various points around the world in Canada as well. And the Maui Aloha Project Eco-Village Initiative embodies an inclusive design and of intergenerational living, learning, and healing communities, where our core is towards thriving and sustainable and regenerative well-being. All of my endeavors are interrelated. In my doctoral research, I examined our values towards thriving, towards the well-being, towards child development and the school years. So my particular angle is education, but nothing is separate. There are no separate entities, and that's something I've learned early on, even formally in education, that it's all interrelated. And my particular focus in education has always been the well-being of children. And I'm concerned with the social emotional well-being, but I'm concerned with all holistic, a holistic education perspective. I'm concerned not only with the intelligent and academic, which we spend so much energy on and so much time on, but I'm concerned with the social, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, the ecological, the environmental, the physical, and so on. And my particular dissertation topic, I'm speaking to parents about their experience with their child's learning disabilities. And I've spoken to many, and I continue to speak to many, and it's the labeling process that can be really detrimental in society, which we know. And having a child being labeled at a young age, you have a behavioral issue, you have a learning issue, that affects their self-esteem. And my research really focuses on eliminating this disability model of labeling. You have a learning disability, you have a behavioral disability, and talking about what you do have from a positive psychology and a neuroscience perspective. What do we all have? Our multi-literacies, how can we put it together as a team to make a difference? And so the Maui Aloha Project Eco-Village Initiative just is that kind of initiative. It's a peace initiative for the future. We have learned from many eco-villages and intentional communities around the world, many of the important things that we need to know, but these eco-villages are really centered on the fundamental needs of society. We need to be regenerative. And so we want to be self-sustainable. And so from a food production perspective, we want to be able to create sustainably wherever we are and to provide for our community and the community around us, food and shelter and many learning opportunities that aren't constructed from an external source. Everything should be constructed from an internal source, from our own motivations, our own identities, our multiple identities. I'm a part of the team of everybody here towards sustainable, climate smart practices and methodologies, and towards enabling entrepreneurs to be able to create systems and practices that they can teach and empower their communities around them to be able to be sustainable and regenerative communities that can provide for the most basic needs and wants, and hopefully towards thriving communities all over the world. And my background, as I said, is in holistic education, in play. I practice Qigong yoga energetics, which is a breathing exercise. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I'm not sure who is CV, if that is Dr. Amadou or not. I just got a quick message from him saying that it is raining torrentially over where he is, and he's having some internet connection problems. So he's joined us and then he left us, and he potentially has joined us again. But I'm not sure if that is him, CV. In the meantime, what I was saying earlier.
Well, before you go there, Lloyd, we do have, Nick, I think we have other guests. So let's introduce any guests that would want to introduce themselves, and then you can pick up from there. That's okay with you?
Yeah. Okay. So we have Nikki on the line. Maybe Nikki wants to reintroduce herself once more. We've had her on these calls before. Hello, Nikki.
Hello. Hi, how are you all?
How are you doing this week?
Okay, I'm glad. Thank you very much. It's always great. I always look forward to your sessions because I learn from you. Just very briefly, my name is now officially Dr. Nikki Depina, which I'm very excited about. And I'm based in London, in the United Kingdom, but all my work is basically in Africa. Even although we're also working with Argentina, and we're working with Spain, and we're working with Mexico. We have people that belong to my organization called Global Peace Let's Talk, literally now from across the world. Our membership is growing every day, and it's getting more and more exciting to see the network of people that are so focused on making a difference in this world. Mostly encouraging others, mostly on supporting ways to establish food gardens, to establish effective environmental methods of improvement. I'm incredibly passionate about Global Peace Let's Talk, owing to the fact that I'm now connected to these people across the world that are seriously making such an impact in their communities, and working together to find ways to make our life more, I'm just trying to find the right word, but
perhaps
maybe
meaningful might be the right word.
Meaningful. Thank you so much. Yes, I love that. Yes, I love that. Making it more meaningful. But also because they are able to work with communities to give them a purpose in life. Where before people would just sit and say, well, there's no way forward. They're now having the ability to set small steps, small goals to walk forward bit by bit. Everything we are doing is connected to the Sustainable Development Goals. We offer comprehensive training to all our people so that they're able to understand that what they are doing is exactly what the Sustainable Development Goals is all about. And the difference is that when they start making these connections, they feel so proud. They really do. You know, they are just so proud because now they can stand up and say, I am adding value. I am doing something that's part of a global impact. So we encourage that. I love watching how people can then take what they're learning and make it part of their life. And not just a story, it's real. It's real, it's happening, it's growing. The little seed that's planted is starting to nurture and it's starting to grow and it's making seeds and other people are connected. Honestly, there are times when I think to myself, how is it that we are growing so quickly? But I think it's just because people are taking ownership of the projects. And it's the sense of purpose. That's a strength. So thank you very much. I really love being here. I love listening to all that you are sharing and the people that are giving their presentations. Thank you very much.
And I just wanted to mention as well, like the way I think what we're trying to do also is provide hope. I think that's one of the key words, is providing hope for a better future. And that is actually one of the purposes of creating the Global Unity Network, is to provide hope that people can empower themselves by allowing us and creating a network that can empower them to empower themselves and to have hope for a better future for themselves and create that better world for themselves. So we'll provide the tools that are necessary, the education and training that's necessary for them to say, yes, we can do this. We have our allies around the world. If we don't know how to do it ourselves right now, if we don't have the capacity right now, we can work with our allies and we can find the way forward to achieve the goal. But we're hopeful that it can happen. And providing that hope is probably the number one thing that we can do.
Well, the great news, Lloyd, is that we do have a new guest, Logan Garcia. But thank you so much, Stephanie. You addressed an issue for those with learning disabilities and cognitive disabilities. But I myself am a person with physical disabilities. So I worked through that to be able to uplift those people around the world, because we have to also not just focus our attentions on challenging, racism and those kind of isms, but also ableism. So here in the United States, for example, it's estimated over 20% of our 300 million people are challenged physically or mentally or with learning disabilities. But that's why it's so important to leave no one behind. So before, Logan, I introduce you, I am going to introduce the 17 Sustainable Development Goals in about 2 minutes in a video, because here in the United States, as you may know, the Biden administration recently rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement. However, in the United States, none of the 50 states are even halfway to achieving the SDGs. So it's terribly important to raise awareness about what they are so we can empower our youth. In the chat, I put their Youth for Global Goals. It's actually founded by an organization in Canada. And what they've done is they've created a guideline for youth, the businesses, schools, and communities to actually find tangible ways they can put these practices together. Also, Stephanie, I put in Vision 2030. That identifies the Sustainable Development Goals for people with disabilities to transform our world. But I'm going to briefly share with you now this video. So thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you, Andrew. Always
Technology is only great when it works. Give me just a moment.
Reminders.
Okay, I'm going to begin sharing my screen now. Give me just 1 second here.
Again, I have an update from Dr. Amadou, who's supposed to be on the call. Apparently, he's driving right now through this heavy rain.
Okay.
Trying to find a place off the highway to connect back to our call. He says it's very serious rain. So I guess that's the reason.
We have new guests as well, but I'm going to begin this video. It's only about 2.5 minutes, and then we'll pick up from introductions and then move forward. In the chat, too, I've also put the link there for those of you who want to follow up afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
With goals of peace. Sustainable development around the world. Their mission is huge, but we're breaking it down in 2 minutes. 17 sustainable development goals. Let's get to them, because the more you know. Look, in some corners of the world today, people are living on $1 a day. Hey, that's not how it ought to be. So goal 1, eliminate poverty. And goal 2, root out hunger across the globe. There's 800 million people hungry, if you want to know. Number 3 is health and well-being, and getting people the health care that they need in. Learning in school are the hard to go for. Education opens up minds and doors. Goal number 5 is empower girls and women so they can have the same rights that men are given. Number 6, people need water that's clean. Poor sanitation can spread disease. Carbon-free energy is goal number 7, and how to achieve it is a question that's pressing. But if we put our minds together and work hard, we can find a solution, I'm guessing. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. Now imagine that you work all day for no pay. Economic growth and decent work is goal 8. Goal number 9 is to foster innovation in infrastructure and industrialization. Goal number 10, inequality reduction. 11 is sustainable city construction. 12, well, that's sustainable consumption. So what we use matches up with production. Goal 13 calls for urgent action to combat climate change, cause we know what's happening. 14, protect life under seas. 15, protect life on land. Goal 16 is for peace and justice. All over the planet, they're in high demand. And the final goal, number 17, is the critical factor, the heart of the machine. It's to strengthen the way we achieve these goals of sustainable development around the globe. Yo, 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it.
Okay, Lloyd, thank you so much for your patience. And we've had new guests. So for you that are just joining us, this is our weekly summit on the Indigenous Global Unity Summit. And technically, everyone on Earth is from an Indigenous origin. So we're trying to reconnect ourselves with nature and humanity and with our Earth. So we do have new guests. If you choose to introduce yourself, please unmute yourself and do so. Thank you.
It seemed we had new guests, but people seem to be coming in and out today.
Okay, Lloyd, then I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, what I had today really was to talk about some of the fundamentals of life. As there's this diagram I learned about a few years ago called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and with this there's some fundamentals that need to be satisfied in everybody's life in order for us to move up the hierarchy of Maslow's hierarchy. And one of those is food. And so that is one of the things that we're very much focused on, of course, water and shelter and protection from the elements, and sleep. And so our homeostasis, I believe it's called, as fundamentals that are required by humans, but they're actually not being satisfied by a large number of people around the world. So this is where we're actually focused. We're trying to leverage food as one of the key points of entry to deliver on the SDGs. So of course, people always need safe shelter. People need places to sleep. They need clean water and clean air to breathe. But healthy food is where we're finding a leverage point to create healthy human beings. And it's these fundamentals, sort of at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, that we need to teach people how to implement and achieve for themselves in their own communities, and not be dependent on others for providing those to them. And so that provision philosophy, where people look to others to satisfy those needs. So we want to educate people and train people ultimately for their own benefit and for the benefit of all the people in their own communities, with, again, this concept of leaving no one behind. We're in this context of the fourth industrial revolution. So we're co-creating the future for ourselves. So it's an ongoing process. It's not likely to stop. The fourth industrial revolution is not likely to reverse course anytime soon either. So we're focusing on those who have been traditionally left behind, and allowing them, or providing them with these tools to learn how to leverage these tools that are being created, and perhaps even become the experts in the use of these fourth industrial revolution tools that can support themselves and support people in their local communities and others around the world who can learn to use these tools, and as well support their own local natural environments, which is really the fundamental thing that supports all of us. So Mother Earth in each of our own communities. So we want to be inclusive when we create our network of thinking about all our relations, which is what the Indigenous communities have told us, taught us. It's very important to consider as well. It's not just about human beings. It's about all of the natural environment. It's about even the things we think are inanimate, but are very much supporting us. So the water, the soil, the rocks that we mine, the trees in the forests, and in our communities. So these are things that we cannot ignore, because if we choose to ignore it, this will in all likelihood only result in people being further and further left behind and marginalized, especially by those who are already dominant and are perpetuating this colonial mindset of extracting resources, using people, using the planet, typically for their own narrow, greedy personal profits. So right now, we are at a turning point, I think, in global society. And it's our choice right now to continue this model that we have today, and that's headed toward what my colleague Bill Sosinski called the Mad Max scenario. Or do we make that choice, and do we go toward the Star Trek scenario? And can we achieve what a recent article I read as said it was the most radical invention that Star Trek actually taught us, was that showing us that a vision of Earth as a peaceful humanity, where people in actually the Star Trek universe, we're living in an egalitarian utopian planet that had shrugged off the habit of war. So Star Trek actually was a vision of the 23rd century. It was this vision of the future, of a time when people explored their talents and explored the universe. They created art. They probed the mysteries of science. And this was the engagement that they had. And it was a vision of a future where someday we would have a peaceful coexistence with each other, and we would not be destroying the planet. We would be protecting each other, protecting the planet, protecting the earth. This was sort of the vision of utopia, but I think it's possible to achieve something along those lines. It may not be in our lifetimes as we're talking today, but we can begin this process of teaching our youth, teaching our kids, and giving them hope that this can be an outcome. And although human nature doesn't really change, and there's no sort of government authority or alien race that's forcing this upon us, but we can create and co-create this new social structure to be conducive to satisfying human needs, and through these values. So human nature is compatible with peaceful existence. There are examples of this. And as this article stated, just as wars begin in the minds of men, peace also begins in our minds. The same species who invented war is capable of inventing peace. Humans are wired with great potentials and for altruism, caring, and compassion. And a better world, if it comes into being, depends not so much on technological fixes as on breaking down these centers of power so that we can all play a significant role in deciding matters that affect our daily lives. And as it wrote, if there is a common enemy around which humanity can unite, it is the institutions that protect privilege for an elite with extraordinary power and minimal accountability. So our hopes for peace look most promising in this decentralized myriad of creative local actions of people wanting leaders to respond to their true needs. They also noted that warfare is linked to the human attachment to nations. And as long as people believe that countries are the most significant thing in the world, and that nations have the right to kill, then warfare will exist, will persist. And that perhaps if humans come to see ourselves as residents of a single planet, rather than citizens of individual nations with specific interests, war will be unnecessary. Because war is not necessarily part of human nature. It is linked to our psychic attachment to these countries. So today's 7th Indigenous Global Unity Summit is again being co-hosted by Science for Peace Community Sustainability Working Group, the Andrada and Markham Action Team, our civil society organization, We Energize Global Corporation Turtle Island, in collaboration with Andrew Networks, brought to you by the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors, the AHIABGA Foundation, 5 Points of Peace Youth Foundation. But we are doing this in support of specific organizations right now, one of which is called Agri4Dev, which is based in Montreal by our colleague Fulay Chu. The Community Development Foundation, which is actually in Pakistan, who is co-creating the Global Women's Development Network with their partners across Africa and around the world, also in partnership with the Universal Citizens Media Network. So this IGA Summit event takes place every Thursday morning, 11 o'clock when we started. And this will be ongoing for 50 weeks in total, up until the week just before Africa Day, which is May 25th, 2022. So this is the starting point for development of the media system that is going to support the network, because we want to promote these feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs around the world who are localizing the Sustainable Development Goals. So our Global Unity Network, and I've been thinking about this a little bit, we will likely want to call the Interchange for Peace. And it's being hosted right now on Facebook. The Facebook link that I sent earlier, I could drop it into the chat again. But this will be the starting point. But we will eventually migrate this network over to a virtual collaborative network ecosystem. So this is the idea, is that we want everybody to collaborate virtually, but build locally in the real world the solutions based on collaboration and understanding what are the practical solutions that can be achieved in their community that benefit their own people locally, but also benefit people regionally, nationally, and internationally. So we're sharing our knowledge and the solutions that work so that nobody, again, is left behind. So this event, organized in support of the establishment, is the Global Unity Business Group and the network itself. And so the idea, again, to support the establishment of this collaborative network for the localization of the SDGs, or what we call the global goals, during the 1,000-year Millennium Development Goals process, which of course right now is the Sustainable Development Goals period that actually started in 2015, goes until 2030, but we'll hope actually will, through these conversations, help the world transition toward the establishment of a new set of goals, starting probably in 2031, with that we're hoping maybe even called the Regenerative Development Goals. And so that people around the world will be able to co-create at that time as a result of joining and collaborating on this platform that we are currently attempting to establish. So our goal really is to establish an inclusive global network of communities from around the world that includes all of those who have traditionally been marginalized and left behind, and which is inclusive of all these passionate feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs who are dedicated to engaging and assisting each other in this process of localization of the SDGs during this period of time, as we attempt to unify around the establishment of a new regenerative economy during this, again, fourth industrial revolution. Because ultimately this process of localization, of the implementation of these global goals, including the SDGs during this Sustainable Development Goal period, and the goal of our business group is for the Global Unity Network to become this focal point for the establishment of a future regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. So this is the beginning of a conversation that will, I think, go on for quite a few more years. So Andrew, you wanted to say something?
Actually, yes. One of our new guests is AHIABGA from Development and Peace in Caritos, Canada. And if you could unmute yourself, please introduce yourself and or insert the link to your organization and contact information in the chat. So is that Ada? If you could unmute and introduce yourself, please do so.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Ada, and I'm from Development and Peace, Caritas, Canada. And I live here in Halifax, the unceded ancestral home of I'm trying to remember the name. I'm trying to do the land acknowledgement properly, so just pardon me.
No worries.
Yeah, so, and
actually, we really should be doing a land acknowledgement before each one of these events as well. It is something that we typically have done in our Drawdown and Markham meetings as well here. So go ahead, Ada. If you would please like to do that, that would be wonderful.
And just to let you know, Ada, we are here broadcasting from the Tongva Indigenous Peoples property here in Los Angeles, California. So Ada, yes, please go right ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so as I said, I am joining from Halifax in Nova Scotia, the Indigenous, the original indigenous territory of the Mi'kmaq ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And I have been working with development and peace for like 2 years now. I stumbled on this link. I'm not sure if it was sent to me. I'm not sure who sent it to me, but I saw the link and I was interested when I saw the topics, especially on indigenous communities, which I'm privileged to be having a couple of group study on listening to indigenous voices. And it has kind of been very enlightening for me and mind-blowing. So when I saw the link, I just quickly kind of registered. And I'm sorry I came late, but I just finished a meeting, so I decided to join. And I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's not a problem at all. We're actually getting more people coming in also from other organizations at the same time. But when we talk about Indigenous global unity, we started this project. So this is week 7. We had an event called the Sunlight Spectacle. Actually, in 2020 was the very first Sunlight Spectacle. It happened on June 21st, 2020, during a solar eclipse event. And we had, at that time, planted a tree of peace and reconciliation in St. Jamestown, Toronto, just a few weeks before that. And that tree is twinned with another tree that's located in Bermuda, in the middle of the Atlantic, at the crossroads of the Atlantic. And it's actually situated at Government House. And there's actually two of these trees of peace and reconciliation. One is at Government House and another one in downtown Hamilton, Bermuda. And so our tree of peace and reconciliation in St. Jamestown, and it's twinned with the trees in Bermuda. And when we planted those trees, we decided as well that we would have an event, a global event, to connect people around the world in this process of peace, reconciliation, and forgiveness as a pathway to achieving a peaceful world. Sort of the Star Trek I talked about earlier, the utopian Star Trek world that I think we're on the path to trying to achieve through this sustainable development or the processes of the Millennium Development Goals, the original Millennium Development Goals, the 1,000-year plan to achieve peace on Earth. So we'd like to contribute to that 1,000-year plan by contributing to achieving each of the goals during each of the 15-year period. We started with the MDGs in 2015, and moved toward now, of course, we're in the period of the Sustainable Development Goals, 2015 to 2030. So as we move forward, what we'd like to do is contribute what we can to establishing or achieving these goals as best we can in each of our own local communities. So this is the idea of localization, where we are establishing this process of localization of the Sustainable Development Goals through our ad hoc international advisory board, the Goodwill Ambassadors, and where the Global Unity Business Group is trying to formalize that and monetize that and create the business structures around how to actually make that happen.
Lloyd, on that note, I apologize. I couldn't find a way to raise my hand, but on the screen, I put in Caritas Canada, and let us, if we could, go back to our guest. Could you tell us a little bit more about your organization, please?
Yes, please. Development and Peace Caritas Canada is the international development organization of the Catholic Church here in Canada. And it was founded in 1967 after the Second Vatican Council. For those who are Catholics may be familiar with this, that the Catholic Church has, especially in the global north, has been very, very instrumental in ensuring there is development, integral human development and peace across the world, especially in the global south. So we work here in Canada, Caritas Canada, and because it's also, the name is Development and Peace Caritas Canada, because it's part of the network of the Caritas Network International, which is situated in the Vatican. So because of the big network, the global network of Caritas, we work with them. We are part of them, so that we'll be able to reach every part of the globe that we want to reach. Now, our model of work is mainly working with partners who are on the ground. We don't have offices across the globe, but we have partners who are in their own countries at the grassroots, who understand the situation they are going through, and we support them, we accompany them, so that using their own grassroots solutions to their problems, we're able to support them to be able to overcome whatever challenges in terms of development that they have. So we spread across Latin America, Africa, and also Asia. We have projects that we work with partners, roughly about close to 100 projects, and we are working with partners in more than 100 countries across the globe. I am the animator here in Halifax, in the maritime region. I work as an animator. My responsibility is to animate, to create awareness, to help members, volunteers, who are almost more than 10,000 volunteers across Canada, to understand what is happening in the global south, and to also help them to make decision on what they can do to help their sisters and brothers in the global south to transform their situation. So here, what I do is to help them in terms of education campaigns. I help to mobilize them. I help to conduct workshops. I help also to raise funds here so that we can support our partners in the global south. So basically, that is in brief what I would say, except if there is any question, and that is our website. You can go there, you can solve. There are tons of materials, especially projects that we have done in the past, what we are running right now, countries that we're working with right now, we all have them on our website. And yeah, if there's any question.
Thank you so much. You touched on several very important points. Just to give a little background, I'm now 63 years old. So when I turned 50 on April 24th of 2008, I decided to, since I spent the first 50 years on my own private interests, I spent the next 50 years on humanitarian projects, right? So one of the most important ways to do that at that time was to transition to an online universe. So I've created an online footprint for myself, Andrew Williams Jr. In 2009, I was appointed as one of the first 200 Facebook ambassadors. So I created a footprint for Ambassador Andrew Williams Jr. from 2009. But it was in 2008 that I was a member of the Academy online network based in the UK that included an introduction by someone named Pete Lorenzo of this concept of a global cooperation day on October 4th of every year. And this signified the reconciliation of St. Francis of Assisi with the Emir of Egypt during the Crusades. So this was an opportunity for there to be a demonstration 1,200 years later that is still possible for us to have peace and reconciliation going forward. It was shortly thereafter that I learned that this concept was introduced by Liz Greenwell out of New Zealand. And I had the pleasure of meeting her son, Adam Greenwell. So he and I, since that time, have been in touch and cooperating. It was technically through Adam that I was introduced to Lloyd Helferty as part of the Energyme University group. In the chat, I'll have to repost the United Nations Global Compact. We've had several mentions here of the Davos World Economic Forum and the fact that what we now call the Sustainable Development Goals is only the second iteration of the 1,000-year plan called the Millennium Development Goals that was launched in 2000 by Kofi Annan, who was then the General Secretary. However, in 1999, he actually introduced the concept of the United Nations Global Compact at the Davos World Economic Forum with 44 major multinational corporations who made commitments to human rights, the environment, and labor to make sure not only that they did no harm in those communities, but to work proactively to create a corporate social responsibility organization around the world. There were first 9 principles. They later added a 10th for anti-corruption, because as you may or may not know, Kofi Annan and his organization was very much involved with the challenges that are faced with billions of dollars going into Africa through remittances and aid, but more billions flow out of Africa through illicit trade and finance, primarily through the westernized civilizations, or London, United States, New York, those kind of things. So this first group of 40 corporations has now grown into the largest corporate social responsibility organization in the world, called the United Nations Global Compact. And they had the power through consistency for the leadership at the very top to remain consistent from 2000 through 2015. They were able to develop a number of initiatives around the world, one called Caring for Climate. And when I became president of 5 Points Youth Foundation in 2014, the first thing I did was join the United Nations Global Compact. We made a 5-year commitment from 2015 to 2020 to build a worldwide community resiliency network. So Lloyd was among those first goodwill ambassadors that was recruited back in 2000. And so we actually were able to recruit 100 goodwill ambassadors between the International Day of Peace, September 21st, in 2015 through December 31st. And we were able to create over 50,000 unique social media hits on SlideShare for raising awareness about the Sustainable Development Goals, about the United Nations Global Compact. But it was in September 21st of 2019 that we decided to take a more proactive role, because as we approach this decade of action on the SDGs, it takes more than just hand raising and acknowledgments that, yeah, we joined. We actually wanted to make a commitment to make a real world change. So what we did was, Lloyd was among the first of those ambassadors appointed for a regional ambassadorship, so to speak. And keep in mind, this is all voluntary. This is all on behalf of people who have a passion and heart for accomplishing this objective. One of the first people that stepped up was Janice Da Silva. She was a 20-year veteran of the United Nations in Cabo Verde, just off the east coast of Africa. And she was multilingual, is multilingual, speaking not just Portuguese, but also French, Spanish, and English. Her mentor, unfortunately, he passed away during COVID, but her mentor was a prime minister of the country. He recommended that she focus on not just Cabo Verde, but all the African-speaking, the Portuguese-speaking countries in Africa, including, of course, Angola, which is a country from which the first Africans, Catholic Africans, were pirated to Virginia in 2019. So there's a linkage there historically that goes back to connect all these dots, Ada. So we're very proud and privileged to now have goodwill ambassadors like Lloyd representing not just Canada, but also the Francophone countries, those French-speaking countries, and the Commonwealth of Nations, which includes not just Canada, but also Nigeria, Kenya. There are multiple countries around the world. So Ada, what we hope to do is establish a relationship with your organization and ask you to join the United Nations Global Compact. It's free to join. So what we're trying to accomplish is to balance the 10,000 plus multinational corporations that are members. We want to create an allyship with them through interfaith, neighborhood, and business collaboratives. So we want to add another 10,000 members that are not just joining, say, yeah, we're joined, but who make a commitment to identify which of the Sustainable Development Goals their mission aligns themselves with, and then through platforms like this to record our progress as we go forward. because we don't want to become victims of whitewashing, of claiming that we're part of an idea just to get benefits from it. Even though there are over 13,000 now members of the United Nations Global Compact, over the last 23 years, there have been over 13,000 that have been delisted or suspended because they failed to do the very simple request of publishing what activities that you're doing that support these missions. So Ada, we're looking forward to working with you, your organization around the world, if we can, to make a firm commitment between 2021 and 2023 to align ourselves with the United Nations Global Compact local network strategy. Just to be clear, if you look at a map right now of the world where those countries have people who are most likely to die from the adverse effects of climate change, you'll find that those are the very same countries with the least number of local networks. So our intent is to empower and mobilize our stakeholders around the world with a common mission, Ada, and then to use this new media to document what we're doing and create a reality series online so our youth can see us in action and become part of what we're doing. So it becomes not just a marketable product, but it also becomes, I think, a way we can actually demonstrate the applications of these efforts that have been ongoing for so long. For example, there are 5 corporations now that own 95% of the world's media. But all of us now have access to our mobile phones, which allow us to become producers and not consumers. So Ada, we look forward to establishing a memorandum of understanding with your organization to move forward in this lofty goal. So I want to thank you. And now I'm open to any questions you might have about that.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Actually, what I wanted to actually ask Ada a question regarding the organization he's working with here in Canada, because we are of course, I had mentioned the planting of the trees of peace and reconciliation in Toronto and in Bermuda. We're also partnered with an organization in the Democratic Republic of Congo and originally planted those trees of peace and reconciliation as the first step in this process. So the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassador process of localization of the SDGs starts with the planting of these trees of peace and reconciliation. So that's step 1. That gets the community to join this process. It's actually what our mutual friend Carlos, who was in Sierra Leone, did in his own country earlier this year, actually just about a little bit over a month and a half ago on World Environment Day, June 5th, in cooperation with a number of local community organizations and individuals, businesses, and educational institutions across the country of Sierra Leone, which is, of course, one of the least developed countries on earth. These processes of planting the trees of reconciliation allows those communities to develop what we call a HEPTA matrix partnership, the local interfaith neighborhood and business collaborative teams in each location, each local community where the trees are planted. So he did that actually in 10 locations across the country, all volunteer efforts. But the other thing I do want to mention, besides just planting the trees, is the trees are also symbolic. The trees are very symbolic in the sense that they then become gathering places in the communities that allow people to come together around the trees of peace and reconciliation, and put aside their differences, put aside their status, let's say, in the community, or their differences in religion, or their differences in the color of their skin, or whatever their differences in abilities, and come together as human beings to have these discussions around the goals, around the solutions, especially to achieving the goals. So they gather at the trees in order to and the trees being symbolic of setting aside those differences, coming together as people, as human beings, to work around discussions around solutions, and putting aside all politics, putting aside all these differences that we have in ourselves, that we label people as this or that. You're a Republican, you're a Democrat, whatever.
So what's your question to Ada?
QS. So the idea, my question to Ada was, in this organization that you've established in Canada, in Halifax, are you working with the Indigenous people of Canada as well as others in these developing countries around the world? Because actually, when I grew up, my mother gave me a book called The Fourth World. And in that book, it described how the First Nations of Canada were actually of a lower status than the so-called third world nations of the world. And at this I think at this juncture of reconciliation in Canada, we need to be inclusive of what was at that time called the Fourth World, of the Indigenous communities that have been probably furthest left behind, especially here on Turtle Island, North America, among others, of course, like the different racialized communities. But is your organization also supporting work, for instance, in these northern Indigenous remote communities?
Yes, I would say yes, and at the same time no, because primarily my organization was founded because we wanted it to work with the Global South. But notwithstanding, those of us who are within Canada, in different regions of the country, we also work with Indigenous communities wherever we have, we have, I don't know, do I call it an office in the different 4 regions of Canada. Whatever little we could do with them, we're able to do to support them. But primarily our focus is, the third world, which is Africa, Asia, Latin America. As I said, we are not working directly with these countries. We have partners. We rather work with partners who are in the grassroots. So, but then my organization is working with other networks who are here in Canada who are working directly with Indigenous people, but we don't work directly with Indigenous communities here in Canada. Rather, we look out because that's the primary reason why the organization was formed in 1967.
So let me ask you, if I may, to consider the fact that what we are doing here is connecting together the Indigenous communities of what I'm referring to as Eurasia and the Americas with Africa. So when you work with the Global South, what I found to be most effective is actually what you're actually doing, because you're talking about South-to-South cooperation. And for those of our audience who may not know what that means, South-to-South cooperation, well, I'll let you be more specific if you could. Please explain what you mean when you say South-to-South cooperation.
You mean Global South? When I say Global South?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So what Global South are developing countries. I made reference to Asia, East Asia, Cambodia, Bangladesh, countries like that. We have Philippines. We have partners we work with. In Africa, we work with partners in Nigeria. In Ethiopia, we work with South Sudan. We have partners across Africa we work with. In Middle East, we have partners. In Syria, we have in Israel, Caritas Palestine, we have Caritas Lebanon, we work with them. Now in Latin America, we have partners in Honduras, we have partners in Brazil. So these are the places we refer to as Global South. I guess it's a technical term that, but then we're actually referring to developing countries in those continents. Got
it. Well, the reason I say that is because, as I mentioned to you before, the United Nations Global Compact had the power of consistency. They had one CEO for the first 15 years from 2000 to 2015. His name was George Kell out of Germany. And then for the next 5 years, the CEO was Lisa Kingo from Denmark. But now, last year, Sanda Obijambo from Kenya was appointed as the CEO. So they've developed together collaboratively a 2021 through 2023 global network strategy. And you'll find a link in the chat to their strategy, and it focuses specifically on South-South cooperation. And just to be more specific about what I mean, because we're not speaking just to ourselves here, Ada. We're also speaking to those youth that aren't able to join us here, but may be able to later review this content. So South-South primarily is focusing on those south of the equator, for example, as you say, Africa, Brazil, et cetera, but also connecting those to India, to Asia, those countries. But what you're doing, Ada, and what I'm trying to get done is actually establish the North as an anchor between the South and the South. It is we here in the United States and Canada in particular that have the highest per capita income. So technically, it's really up to us to be the ones, because it is those other countries that have the least global footprint that are negatively impacted by our efforts. So I think, according to Human Rights number 29, responsibility, I think it's important that we take responsibility for connecting those dots. So with that, I'll put a pin in it and open up the floor for any conversations or follow-ups.
So what I wanted to mention as well is that that really ultimately this is all about people. It is about co-creating this process that will allow us to collectively begin to transform our individual and collective relationships with each other and our environments where we live, so that we can begin to live our lives that are more peaceful, more welcoming, more collaborative, and ultimately regenerative. And this process, actually, that we're in right now, especially with these broadcasts, is about identifying our allies who are willing to dedicate themselves in their personal lives and parts of their business lives to this process, and begin to teach. Ultimately, what we need to teach is an entire generation of young people how to engage in this process and do this for themselves as well. So we want to provide initially with sort of lived and living examples of how to do this. So this is why we're operationalizing what we call the climate smart classrooms or the Unity Gardens to operationalize these ideals of daily living moving forward, so that they can understand it in not sort of just as theory or in virtual, but in the real world. Because all of us who are living on this earth can, if we're working together, I think, create a tipping point in society. That's a lot fewer people than you realize. As we build a collective societal organization and the institutions, if we do it around these ideals and values and goals, we can begin to change the dream. What the Pachamama Alliance, which was an organization that actually helped to found Drawda and Markham, they say that what we need to do is change the dream of the North, especially as represented by the American dream. But by doing this at the grassroots, community by community, within the context of our modern culture, and beginning to shift society from this current wasteful consumerism toward hopefully a less destructive and more sustainable paradigm.
Well, on that note, Lloyd,
something more regenerative.
On that note, Lloyd, we do have a new guest, and I do first want to say that, as I mentioned earlier, you're absolutely correct. The American dream is driving a lot of effort around the world, and I'm living in what can be called Hollywood, which is the land of entertainment, et cetera. But also we have the power to create a narrative that drives change through our youth around the world. But let me not divert, not digress. Outtering High School has in the house, I think. Stephanie, you mentioned there's someone here. Perhaps, Stephanie, you could, if you're aware, could do the introduction, or if not, perhaps they could introduce themselves. Outtering School, could you unmute and introduce yourself, please?
Hello, how are you, everyone?
Fantastic, thanks for joining us. Tell us about Outtering High School and then your own name, please. And make sure you put the information in the chat.
Welcome.
So that we can follow up.
Thank you very much. This is Outtering High School, Nairobi, Kenya. I'm here to represent the Global Peace Network, Let's Talk, founded by Nikki Dipina. I'm really interested in the talk.
Okay.
And particularly Lloyd's view of more people coming on board to open up their businesses for peace initiative, especially working with the indigenous communities.
Well, first, could you tell us a little bit more about Outtering Schools? Tell us a little bit more about where you are and what you're dealing with, and how what we're talking about can affect what you're doing, and how you see us working together. That would be helpful to us. And also, please say your name.
Thank you very much. My name is Charles Juma.
Okay, great. Go ahead. And you're a teacher?
Outtering High School.
Are you a teacher or students? Are you administrator? What is your role with Outtering?
Charles Juma is the founder of Outtering Schools, a teacher by profession, English literature. Outtering is found in Nairobi slums, Kiambio and Kariobangi South, in Nairobi, Kenya. What we do in Outtering, we initiate a lot of activities geared towards peace. We use education for peaceful coexistence. One, we do what is called indigenous food lessons to the students and the pupils. And we share with others around the globe, particularly Argentina. We also do what is called sports and other extracurricular activities, that is music and drama, such that we use our students to integrate sports into education and thereby bringing in peace within the school setup, so that the children that grow, they grow knowing and building peace, because they are the generation of tomorrow. Talking about peace and indigenous communities, we focus mostly on indigenous dances in Africa to maintain the cultures of our people through the Kenya music festivals. So we don't do any other music outside the continent. We particularly concentrate on the music within African context, that is Kenya and the rest of Africa, to build peace.
Well, thank you. I think that was very comprehensive. How many students do you now have, and how many students have been alumni of your organization?
Outtering was founded in the year 2005. It has been in existence since that time. We have primary and secondary section. In the primary, we have 50 pupils. In secondary, we have 200 pupils within the school.
Okay, excellent. So your curriculum this year, how can what you're doing in your school, how can we help work with your school to accomplish your mission and vice versa?
One of the things that we are looking for is, partners to network with in building peace. Outtering has gone up to Japan with indigenous dance in the past, in the year 2009, to promote the indigenous coexistence that exist across the globe. We are looking for more partners because of the pandemic that came, so that we can coordinate our activities into your activities that promote peace through indigenous communities. We are trying to also, because we are in the urban setup, we are trying to promote cultural activities that maintain indigenous lifestyle because of the rural-urban migration. So we are looking for partners to come on board or network with, so that we can promote peace through these activities like music and drama and our education process.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm actually hoping that you will be able to actually come back on one of these Thursday events and perhaps provide us with a more comprehensive presentation about the work that you are doing. So I will hopefully connect to you. If you can leave your contact information in chat, then I can connect to you later, and we can actually schedule you in to do more of a comprehensive presentation about what it is that you're actually doing at the Outer Rim School.
In the meantime, in the chat there, I'm also the chairperson of the International Advisory Board for the Center for African Volunteers based in Kenya. And the CEO, Josephat Moses, has created or has recruited over 6,000 volunteers throughout primarily Kenya, but in 17 other neighboring African countries. So if you could be so kind as to put in your email address or contacts and follow up, I'd like to connect us together. And through Nikki DePrima and her Global Peace Initiative, form a memorandum of understanding where we help work with you to accomplish your objectives. Also, I'm the brand ambassador for Generation Hip Hop Global, based out of South Africa. And if you're involved with music, we'd like to involve you or invite you to consider participating with our projects and vice versa. So thank you very much.
Thank you too. I have shared my contact there on the chat.
So Ada, you're there in Canada. I'd like to ask if you would be so kind as to share with us any work that you're doing in Kenya that might be able to connect you with what Charles is doing there in Kenya, so that we can work together to expand your mission and vision, and also to demonstrate that we are actually having practical outcomes to these conversations and not just conversations. Only if you unmute your, yes, thank you.
I'm not sure we have any partner right now in Kenya. I may not know all because we have program officers who are directly working with these partners. This is something I may have to check, but right now I can't tell you if we have any partner in Kenya.
Well, can you tell me if you'll be able to find out and then connect him with me, and I'll connect him with Charles?
Certainly, yeah, I can find out.
Excellent. Okay, Lloyd, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, if Ada doesn't have any specific partners in Kenya, well, we may now just have a partner that we can work with.
Well, as he explained, there is a hierarchy, there's an organizational structure. So I wouldn't expect him to know everyone in this hierarchy or organizational structure.
Of course not.
But I do expect him to be able to identify who would be responsible for Nairobi, and we can connect that dot.
I can only direct you to the programs officer, but I cannot determine some of these decisions, right?
Understand. Thank you. We do understand that.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, this is about identifying our allies and working together to actually see if we can eventually transition our economy actually toward a more fully regenerative economic paradigm, one that can be embraced.
Well, in that regard, let me ask you, Ada, what, if any, for what you do know about, right? does your organization work with other organizations outside the Catholic Church, or how do you engage in your local community? Can you explain it to give us an example of what you're doing?
Yeah, so just to also say that our work is actually based on the Catholic social teachings. Yes, our organization works with other organizations, of course, who are not Catholics. It could be Muslims, it could be Buddhists, whatever they are. What is important is that if their mission, tallies their with ours, if we have the same mission and goals, certainly we work with them, which is about integral human development, human rights, so all of that are incorporated in the Catholic social teachings. Okay.
Well, yes, I guess I meant more specifically. Are you working with high schools? Are you working with nonprofits that have a similar mission? But anyway, I guess I'll follow up more specific with you on a one-on-one. So thank you very much.
Awesome.
Yes. Okay,
yeah,
Lloyd.
So I think.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Ball's back in your court. We're about 90 minutes in, so ball's in your
court.
Well,
this was what I was thinking, is that we're probably fairly close to wrapping up today. Unfortunately, we're going to have to reschedule Dr. Amadou for hopefully another day when it's not pouring rain and he has internet connections, unfortunately, today. But what I wanted to do was also remind people as well of the original March 2018 purpose, actually, for which we created the original We Energize Global Cooperation Turtle Island International Civil Society Organization, which was also created with myself, together with Bill Sosinski from Energize University, Adam Greenwell from Global Cooperation Day, and Rick Ulfik from We the World. And we did that, we created that organization really to create a cross-cultural collaborative platform for peace for the purpose of implementing and achieving the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, in cooperation and without reference to specific beliefs of each culture, but in accordance with the tradition and ethical frameworks of each population as they wish to implement those goals at the local level within each country and jurisdiction. So our purpose really was all along to help build these renewed global cultural peace relationships within the context of the cultural and linguistic diversity that is the global the global society, based on the recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. So from the beginning, it's really been about facilitating the creation of what we call human consciousness 2.0, such that human individuals are actually capable of relating to all living things as if part of us. So the original We Energize Global Cooperation Turtle Island, since its founding about 3 years ago or so, has focused on what we call life value peace education for the purpose of facilitating the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And it was for all countries. So we've been doing this essentially by implementing this education toward awakening dreamers with the goal of affecting these changes in our modern culture toward this tipping point in our collective culture, such that people do recognize that life value is fundamentally above and more important than money value. In other words, really, we say that life value peace education. And early on in our process, we decided that we would do this work in the context of life learning gardens, which we are now calling Unity Gardens. So this is the project we're on, is to try to develop real world learning gardens in all our communities, the Unity Gardens, the life learning gardens, where we can educate a new generation of youth to take care of each other, to take care of the world, all of humanity.
On that note,
all
Lloyd,
relations.
on that note, Lloyd, I'd like for Anna and also Charles in the chat. I put the link to the Ed Fu Foundation, but also we have a partner request form. So Stephanie, I'd like to also extend this invitation to you as well. Please go through the process. Let us begin to identify specific ways that we can right now begin to map out a plan of action so that we can constructively work together. And the intent is to identify how these projects impact one or more of the Sustainable Development Goals. And that intent is for us to publicize and also attract support from those others with similar missions so that we can align ourselves. Ada, you were not here, I don't think, earlier when I mentioned that the United States, through a recent survey report, has determined that none of the 50 states are on track to accomplish the Sustainable Development Goals for those least, for those that are left furthest behind. So our intent is to be the ones that show the way that we actually are working towards that. And what we're believing is that once we raise the awareness about what these goals are, then we'll find more and more organizations that are able to join our efforts. So in the chat there, I put the Ed Fu Foundation partner request form. Please be specific about ways we can actually network together going forward. And Stephanie, that extends to you as well.
Thank you very much. I've seen it.
Yes,
okay,
so
Lloyd, I'll turn it back over to you. We're getting close to wrap-up time.
Yeah, I think so. We've had a good conversation today. We've outlined a lot of our ideas. We've connected with additional people that I think we can safely say maybe some future allies in our efforts. And so we will have to reschedule, unfortunately, Dr. Amadou for another day when it's hopefully not pouring rain where he is, and where you can maybe connect to some sort of landline, digital landline system that's more stable. So we will convene again next week, and next week likely scheduled right now. I should mention, just checking my notes here, for next week we have coming up.
We have the South African Network for next week. They're going to be introducing a webinar on what they call gender-based violence. But I was proud to participate with their events. Their first event dealt with royal and traditional leaders from throughout Africa. So tomorrow's or next week's event will actually be dealing with youth. So the idea is to get the viewpoint of the youth of what's actually happening on the ground and get their viewpoints. So we're empowering our youth as we go forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Andrew. So I couldn't pull up those notes quick enough, and actually you seem to have more knowledge of the event anyway, so that worked well. So I think that will be a wrap for today. Thank you everyone for being on the call today, and we will continue this weekly event as we move forward to build our global unity network and the programs for globalizing the SDGs and implementing regenerative solutions at the community level and empowering our feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs. So thank you very much and have a great week.
Thank you all. Love to everyone.